Welcome to the Phelan Leadership Academy Teacher Observation Rubric, Domain 5, Effective Lesson Components. This professional learning experience will encourage you to learn, grow, inspire, and transform. The Teacher Observation Rubric, Domain 5, Effective Lesson Components. Effective lesson components include the teacher effectively communicating lesson expectations, the criteria for success, employing differentiated gradual release of responsibility with adequate time for independent practice. The teacher regularly checks for understanding and is intentional with lesson closure so that scholars demonstrate mastery of new skills. In order to break down the rubric, in Domain 5, we'll take it and unpack indicators. Indicator 5.1, Standards Align Instruction. These are some guiding questions that will help educators to really be able to self-reflect. Are the learning targets visible, scholar-friendly, aligned to state standards, and revisited throughout the lesson via task, activities, or discussion? An example may include, in order to put it in scholar-friendly language, today I am learning and then whatever that standard is in a scholarly friendly way. So that I can, what skill are they going to be able to demonstrate? What is the standard, the skill in that standard? I will know that I have it when I can, dot, dot, dot. What is the success criteria? What will tell them what success looks, feels, and sounds like? So while all three of these statements, it breaks down what we're learning, why we're learning it, and then how the scholar is going to demonstrate mastery of what they learned. Standards aligned instruction. This is just a short example of an ELA literacy standard. Explain how the character's actions contributed to the sequence of events. So if this was the standard, this is the skill. So scholars have to do quite a few things. I can explain character actions. So they first have to be able to explain a character's actions so that I can what? Right? What is the skill that they have to demonstrate? They have to be able to understand how their actions contributed to the sequence of events in the story. So they're really developing an analysis skill. I'm successful when I can do what? The teacher expects her scholars or his scholars to explain 1 to 2 actions that contributed to each event. For example, by completing a 4 to 5 item film strip to list the events or actions in order and to write or present it as if it's a police interrogation or a press conference in groups of 2. So again, giving scholars a real world analogies. There's a film strip. They're really having to unpack everything that happened, right? They're also supposed to put 2 actions in each of the film strip. They get to draw the series of events at beginning, middle, end, and this provides a very layered level of skills that scholars are demonstrating in order to unpack this standard. And so everything this teacher is asking the scholars should do is in line with this standard. Standards aligned instruction. Indicator 5.2, anticipatory set. Does the lesson include a hook or topic/activity or some type of exploratory experience that provides personal context and or spark scholar interest? Again, what is going to spark your scholar's interest? All of our scholars are uniquely different, right? One thing that most of our scholars as Generation Zers or Generation Alpha, they're very visual. And so really just thinking about things that we can use to capture their interest. This you see on the screen is a hidden objects picture. Many of us as educators, when we were younger, we may have experienced these where we really enjoyed finding the hidden objects. Well, this allows us to kind of explore that a little bit further. I can describe characters in a story, their traits, motivations, and feelings, and explain how their actions contribute to the sequence of events. Look at this room. What do you think the sequence of events? What were the sequence of events that occurred to have this room get to the place where it looks like what we see in front of us? So, a hook that this teacher decided to use is to draw, predict, and write. So, part 1 of this hook is predict and draw the traits, what the gender, the age, etc. of the main character. What do you think this main character looks, feels, and sounds like? Getting the scholar to just visualize who they think the main character of this story is. What do they look like? Are they an older person? Are they a younger person? Are there any things in this picture that might give or might indicate the age of this character or the gender of this character? And why do our scholars think that gender or that age is unique to what we see here in this picture? Number two, so it gives them the ability to predict, right? Number two, it says write 2 to 3 predictions that would explain the sequence of events that led to the current state of this environment. We don't have any evidence. All we see is what we see. So scholars are predicting what do they think happened first, second, and or third. Indicator 5.3, gradual release of responsibility, or GRR, the I do portion. What percentage of scholars were ready to be released to work independently without supports? What is the new skill being modeled, right? By the teacher or by the scholars or by a video or a guest speaker, etc., etc. For scholars who require additional support. So here we have the I do, right? And the I do could be something that's led by the teacher, the scholar, a video, or a guest speaker, or someone else. But it's that initial modeling of a new skill. But we always want to know what percentage of our scholars are already, meaning they've already mastered the skill. Maybe they learned it last year. Maybe they're ahead of their time. So, what do we do with those scholars? So, gradual release of responsibility is a very powerful strategy because it tells us who's new to this learning, who already knows this learning, right? And it helps us to be able to actually differentiate. The gradual release of responsibility, as a teacher, we start with focused instruction. We are very specific and uniquely teaching our scholars by modeling. They're able to see us and watch us, and they're able to make connections before we're asking them to do it themselves. So that's the I do portion. Indicator 5.4, effective communication of the success criteria. Can both the teacher and scholars communicate the success criteria, the directions, and task expectations? Does teacher explanation extend scholar thinking? So if your administrator or any visitor comes in the classroom and say, hey, tell me what you're learning today. Scholars should be able to tell us what they're learning today, and they should be able to tell us why it's important. But most importantly, indicator 5.4 says they should be able to share with us the success criteria. As soon as we ask the question, tell me how do you know that you're successful with this? How do you know when you've really gotten it and you understand it? The scholar should be able to say, oh, because you know what? I'm going to score 70% or higher on this exit ticket. Or I know that I have this rubric and I believe that I'm going to score here on this rubric because I did this, this, and this. So the success criteria should be very clear. Scholars should be able to explain that, and so should the teacher. And the teacher should have options to extend scholar thinking if you do have a scholar who is already familiar with the skill set or needs to be challenged. This is an example of a rubric, again, that a teacher created, put it on an anchor chart. I can read and write numbers up to 1,000. And so to be able to score a standard score is 3. I can read and write numbers up to 1,000 in 3 different ways: the numeric form, the word form, and that extended form, right? But to go above and beyond the standard is a level 4. I can use what I know at a level 3 to read numbers that are greater than 1,000. I can write them in creative ways. So a scholar who can really go above and beyond the standard and the skill, this teacher is already preparing for that scholar. What if you start the lesson and you have 10 of your 20 scholars who can already read and write numbers up to 1,000? You want to have something already ready for them, for those scholars who can exceed that expectation. Indicator 5.5, gradual release of responsibility. We do. So now you've modeled it in the earlier indicator. Now this one is where the teacher models it and the scholars help. The scholars are an active part of this process in doing the work. So the question is, do learning experiences offer meaningful guided practice before independent practice? So again, we should never release a scholar to do independent work if we haven't modeled it first and then we haven't done this indicator, which suggests that we are both going to work together So I did it on my own as an educator, and now me and the scholar, we're going to work on it together before, so that that scholar is really confident that they can work through the problem on their own before being released. This section, it just speaks to the educator doing about 70% of the work and the scholars coming on board doing about 30%. Then when we get to the we do together, it's 30% educator, 70% students. So maybe the scholars are going to now work in pair partners before you have the scholars work completely by themselves, right? Where it's 100% on each individual scholar to be released to work together. One digital platform that's great for this to be able to assess where your scholars are throughout the learning. You may just have 3 or 4 questions you ask them throughout the learning, the quizzes platform. It really, you can run reports and really see how your scholars are performing, which percentage of the scholars in your class were able to answer accurately, and which, how many scholars had it partially correct in yellow and how many had it completely incorrect if we're looking at accuracy, right? Versus this question was a challenge, or this scholar was able to answer a certain amount of questions but have 4 wrong. So we know that this scholar needs some intervention, right? And so using digital platforms that provide us that immediate feedback are a very powerful tool. Indicator 5.6, check for understanding. Does the learner experience allow scholars to make their individual thinking visible? Are scholars allowed to talk? There should be more scholar talk than teacher talk. So, verbal, making their thinking visible through written communication, using visuals. Can they draw pictures? Are they able to touch and have a hands on experience? Are they able to show you what they know through movement? Are they able to act out different scenarios and situations through the movement of their body? And so these are things that are very important and powerful. Some samples or examples may include exit tickets, fist to five, a self reflection, mini assessments, voting, polls, quick writes, and even some group consensus. So some discussions and questioning. Here's a resource. There's 53 ways that you can check for understanding, and there's a whole list. I mean, muddy moments, 5 words, 2 word summaries, quizzes that you can invent out of 10, summary poem activity, mind mapping, talk show panel discussion, write a letter, creating an ad or an advertisement. So there's tons of ways that we can engage scholars into creative ways in checking their understanding. Indicator 5.7. This is the gradual release of responsibility, where we come to the you do section. Scholars will either do this with another partner, or they are released to work independently. And so, does independent, paired, or group practice and or assessments align with the instructional goal or outcome, right? So we want to make sure everything is in alignment. We release the scholars. The scholars should be working on that standard-based skill that we modeled, that they helped us when we got to the we do, and now they are completely released on their own to work and to complete the you do. It should be standards aligned. Everything should be in alignment with that standard or that skill. This is an example of a gradual release of responsibility model, where what you would do during the you do together: ask and respond to questions, works with the teacher and classmates, completes process alongside others, versus a you alone. This scholar should be able to apply the learning independently, to take charge of their learning, to self direct themselves, to collaborate amongst peers, and to be able to problem solve. And then the last indicator in this domain is lesson closure. Does the lesson have an intentional plan for closure, an opportunity to apply new knowledge and skills? The scholars have a chance to extend their thinking, make connections to essential questions and the objective during the closing activity. We always want to make sure we have a closing activity. Sometimes, the class ends and man, we're right in the middle of the good parts. We always want to make sure we're monitoring our time so that we have a closure for that day. Scholars need closure, right, to be able to stamp the learning and to make it stick. One way that you can do that is through an exit ticket. What does the term heir mean? Why was there confusion about who should be king? And who were the 3 main contenders to the throne, right? So these types of questions can be powerful. Maybe you're asking them specific content questions, or maybe you're going to have them do a 3-2-1 reflection. What are 3 things I learned today? What are 2 things I found interesting? And what is 1 question that I still have? These questions can be a powerful thing for the teacher to address the next day. This tells you what is found to be interesting, meaning these are the things that are definitely going to stick. Anything that capture their interest is what's going to stick. And then things that they learned today tells you if they actually, what they learned was on target with what you intended for them to learn. For additional information on the Teacher Observation Rubric Domain 5, effective lesson components, please feel free to check the academic playbook for more details, and definitely explore and or ask your instructional specialist or your site-based administrator for any additional resources. Thank you for your time. And again, this is just a quick overview of the Domain 5 effective lesson components Teacher Observation Rubric. Thank you for your time.